perfectly frank, I wasn't on board to begin with the idea. I was very wedded to the idea of the dual narration, and so many. I with the books that I love to read have several timelines running through them, and it was a real learning experience, with the publishing industry, to be working with my first book, to have basically written the book that I wanted to write, submit it, and then make minor changes. And then with the second one, submit the idea, but then have a lot of editorial input from the publisher, sort of suggesting how the book should progress. And I did take quite a bit of convincing, but in
how do you know when to trust the editors and when to trust yourself?
Oh, that is a good question. It's it is tricky. I think, strangely, having experience with the poetry world has helped. And okay, sort of bear with me while I explain this. I think when it comes to because poets write little short pieces and have sort of have a stock of work that is constantly being submitted to journals and out to magazines and for other publishing opportunities, we are sort of used to getting editorial feedback. Like, it's with poetry, it's really common for an editor to get back to and say, yes, we really like this poem, but would you consider making these little changes, and then we'll definitely publish it. And you and so, because that happens quite frequently, you sort of get it wears away that sort of like any sort of sense of arrogance about your work. You know how that it's a bit, especially because poetry is often so intensely personal. When you're sending a lot of work out, of course, you're getting a lot of rejections back as well. So you sort of it sands off those edges, I think, and really prepares you for the real world of publishing, in which it's intensely subjective. It doesn't, just because somebody has rejected your work, it isn't personal. They're not rejecting you as a writer. They're rejecting your creative output, because for a variety of reasons. It may not, I mean, it may be because it's crap, but it may also be because it's it just doesn't suit the particular issue that they're putting together. And I think because poets are getting this, having a back and forward with different editors, and so frequently, it really does prepare you for the real publishing world, when you've got a whole novel together. I remember when one of my dearest friends, who has only ever been a novelist, I remember, and we used to go running together, and so we would talk through. We'd go on long runs, and we would talk about all sorts of writing issues and publishing issues, and I used to feel so sorry for her, because she had been working for years and years and years on her first novel, and so after all of these years, she was just beginning to send it out, and so only just really starting to get her first load of rejections. And I could see how deeply each of these rejections was hitting her, and I remember thinking to myself, honestly, poetry has thickened my skin as a writer, because I haven't been this hurt by a rejection in years.
I love this. It's Sorry, I was just gonna say, I love it because you think of poets as so sensitive, but basically, poets are the toughest of all of us, because we've worked in this hard.
Yes, I think
I
we are. Just the rigors of the publishing world has given us rhinoceros skin. We just, yeah, when it comes to handling rejection, it's like, you get advice from a poet on how to deal with it.
Oh, fantastic! So why the shift from poetry to novels? Is it just that you were writing short stories and then like it fell in your lap, or were you pursuing the sort of the novelist occupation?
Well, no, not at first. When I started writing, and, thinking that, starting to take myself, trying to take myself seriously as a writer, I was only writing poetry and had no desire to write anything else. In fact, I sort of didn't think that I could write anything else. Whenever inspiration hit me to write something, it always bubbled out in poetry. So I just thought that meant, that is my creative output of choice. That's sort of the natural fit for me. And it wasn't until going to Varuna, I think maybe 2012, I think. And I just happened to be, I was meant to be there writing poetry. I got that was the fellowship that I got was for writing poetry. But I happened to be in the house with a bunch of the most incredible short story writers. And, you remember what it's like when after dinner, well, you don't have to, but it's very common for the writers to sit around the fire and not just talk, but we'd share our work, and we would there might be a night for reading bits and pieces, and I was, because there were these incredible short story writers in the house, like Robin Mundy and Felicity Volk. I remember sitting there listening to the stories that they were reading, and just the voice and the rhythm of it, and I was just it was like it was like an immersive short story writing experience. And I remember going back to my room one night and thinking, I'm just so taken with what they're doing. I'm just so in love with their sentences and the rhythm
Oh,
of their sentences of what they're doing, that I want to try that. So I went the next day. I tried my first short story, and it was a paramedic story. And the story that I tried to write that day, I remember reading it one night, and they were all very lovely about it. But
wow.
it was clear that I was like I was
We're
just a
talking,
beginner.
yeah.
But they were very supportive, and yeah, and that story ended up in the application of pressure. So yeah, that was, and once I'd started writing short stories, I realized that that I loved them, and that maybe prose wasn't so strange and terrifying. And I went back home to South Australia, and a good friend of mine is another incredible short story writer, Rebecca Clarkson. If you get the chance to read her book, Barking Dogs, it is a masterclass on the short story form. And I was really lucky in that she, as soon as I started talking short stories with her, she agreed to mentor me, and that was, yeah, that was the
Oh,
start of
lovely.
short story writing, and how I ended up, writing the application of pressure.
Wow, yeah. So, we're talking a lot about Verona. Feels like these fellowships and residencies and that sort of thing are a wonderful way to writers to connect, but also a way to kind of fatten up your writer resume and perfect your craft and all these kind. It's just a real benefit. And so, do you have any sort of insights about that? Any like, I want to do more of them. So just selfishly, how do I do more of them?
Yes. Look, I'm a great advocate for the power of writing residencies, and and yes, it's once they're great for the writing CV, but I would argue that they're even more valuable for the community that tends to be forged there. It's I find that it's one of those things that people who aren't writers have this idea that that we sit at home in our offices and we're all alone, and writing is a very solitary occupation, and um, and and of course, like, the majority of the work is done alone in your office, but I it's I would also argue that, from my own experience, so many of the opportunities that have come my way have come from making connections with other writers, and I think that I've always found that where I come from, South Australia, we have a very small but tightly knit and mutually supportive writing community, whether it's for poetry or novels or short stories. Um, and but places like Varuna really allow that sense of community to expand to Australia. So the people that I've met while being at Varuna in the Blue Mountains, I've also been really lucky to go to the Catherine Susanna Pritchard Writing Centre in just outside of Perth, and which is also another fantastic residency opportunity, which I would recommend as well. And the people that I've met there, you forge connection, and you need good friends in writing, because so many things that you need. Is great to have a writing community, because you want feedback on your work. You want, and so you get into relationships where you send your work to somebody, and they share theirs with you for feedback.
Absolutely.
There are when you're about to be published, the little blurbs and endorsements and things that go onto the book, you've got to know people
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't.
to send your book to, that so hopefully they like and will say something nice about it. When you're applying for grants, you need people to write you support letters. So and those are people that are the people that you ask are generally people that you have met or made connections with. So and I've and when it comes to finding a publisher or finding an agent, sometimes these, like, people will suggest will suggest you to publishers or to agents and that sort of thing. So there are which is how that's how I came to be to find my publisher, Affirm Press, because somebody who was already being published by them sort of put my name forward, and they said, yep, send me the manuscript. And so I ended up in the very lucky position of being able to skip the slush pile, the unsolicited manuscript pile. So so I can't overstate the importance of getting out of your office as a writer, and meeting other people in the writing community, because it's a very it's people there's this terrible sort of stereotype of writers sort of always being jealous of each other, but that hasn't been my experience of the writing community at all. Generally speaking, I think that
No,
that
mine
people
either.
are very happy to support each other, and really would take any opportunity to give somebody who's coming up, behind them a bit of a helping hand. So.
Absolutely.
Sorry, that felt like
Absolutely.
a
That's been my
very
experience
long
as
and
well.
involved answer to a very simple
No,
question. Sorry about that.
I was just agreeing. No, no. It's actually, I completely agree with what you're saying. My experience has been that writers are very supportive of one another and very positive. And I was quite nervous my first evening at Verona, and coming in and feeling like total imposter syndrome, and I'm here
Oh,
with all
no.
these successful writers, and I'm just like this, and I just felt so, and everybody was so lovely, yourself included. You guys were just lovely, and it was possibly one of the best experiences of my life that week. It was such a special week, and I'm very excited to be going back. Trying not to build it up too much in my head.
Yes. Oh, I'm so happy to
Yeah,
hear you're going back. And how amazing that you're about to talk to Laurie,
thank you.
whose book that he basically wrote while he was there, at the time we were there together, is about to come out in
I
like
know. It is,
in a
it
week
is
or something. It's amazing.
very
Yeah.
cool. It is very cool. You were working on the book that just came out. So, I actually, let's talk about that for a second. So that was, June 2021 that we were at Verna together. You were working on the Art of Breaking Ice, and Laurie was working on what is now called Love Dad. It was called something else at the time. And it is 2023, 2 years later. Um, do you think that writers, new writers especially, maybe underestimate how long it takes? Even like both you and Laurie had books published before. Even for seasoned published authors to get the next book out, do you think they underestimate that? And why does it take so long?
Look, I blame television and the movies. You know, when you see there's the writer in the movie and they've got the idea, and then there's the writing montage where they're typing away, and the pages of the manuscript are piling up beside them, and then it's like 3 weeks later they've finished the manuscript, and the book's off at the publisher, and then bam, within a month there they are with the holding it in their hands, and it's ridiculous, because it does take a phenomenally long time. So
I think I've seen that movie.
I love those movies. I love watching writers in movies, but whenever I see the montage, I can feel, my heart clenching into a fist, that's so unreasonable. So it's the
Oh, that's funny. That's so
it
funny
takes so
because
long.
I know, somebody was just saying to me the other day, but I was thinking about it, but I know with the application of pressure, you're married to somebody who was a paramedic. They call them paramedics in Australia, an EP. Um, and
Yep.
so you did all your fact checking, and I was just speaking to an author who writes crime fiction, and they get their novel read by, people in the industry, and we're always checking our work. But like, has any film director or film writer ever gone to a writer and go, or a publishing person is like, see my script? Is this authentic?
Yeah. How long does it really take? Yeah. And then and you see the jump cuts of the writer sort of looking like less and less sort of composed, and their hair going everywhere, and the beard coming through, as the months and months and months in between sending your manuscript in, and even just getting a response from a publisher can it's the minimum that you would be
Yeah.
expecting to wait after submitting a manuscript to a publisher would be 3 months. So and then you've got the the structural edit. So so it goes to your editor. The editor does those big picture, tries to solve the big picture problems with it. And so while they're writing up the structural edit report, it's another couple of months. Then they send it back to you and say, you've got to fix all of these things. And that takes a couple of months. And then you send it back. And then the next thing you know, you've got the copy edit. So months so you've got a couple more months while the copy edit, and then you've got the proofreading, and then after all of those different editing components are done, then it goes to the printer, which is another couple of months before it turns into a beautiful object that you can hold in your hand.
And we haven't even talked about the cover design, the artist, and the marketing team, and no, it's insane. It's insane. And I've been trying to get traditionally published for a long time, and one of the reasons is because I know how much work goes into it, and I don't have the resources to be all of those people involved in getting a book out. And I don't trust myself to do it all those things to that level. It's just it's insane how much is required to get a book like this out into the world, and an equality that I think we all want our books to be at.
I have so much respect for people who do go the self-publishing route, because there is no possible way that I could do all of that myself with any level of skill. Yeah, it's especially when it comes to the I'm a terrible. I need another editor. I can't. My self-editing skills are just not up to it, and I'm certainly when it comes to proofreading. Yeah, I need other people. I need their expertise. So I think self-publishers are very, very multi-talented people.
It's insane. It's daunting.
True.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But speaking of publishing, will you circle back around, do you think, in the future? Do you see a world where you'll circle back around to poetry, and poetry will end up published in a book form?
I'm trying to
back to more novels, more short stories?
Well, I'm trying to do it all and not managing it, really. So I've got I do have while I've been writing the historical novel, I also have been still trying to. It's been very slow, but put together a poetry manuscript. So I do have a poetry manuscript that I'm currently submitting to poetry publishers, and no success as yet. But it's poetry publishing in Australia is a very competitive and difficult nut to crack. It's poetry writing is going through a huge renaissance, and it's not just in Australia, I think across the world. But when it comes to trying to get your poetry manuscript published in a collection, the number of publishing houses is slowly shrinking in Australia. So it is really challenging. The when you've got a novel or a memoir or a non-fiction book, you look at the big five publishing houses, or are there six? I can never keep them straight, but sort of the big names, and then there are the smaller sort of independent publishing houses that are which are what they publish, because they take a few more chances, I think, on so and the books that they do choose to publish, they really support. So the publisher that I'm with, a firm, is one of them, and they're fantastic. They're, incredibly supportive and walk you through every step of the process. So yeah, they're wonderful. But
did you, like you said, like you started off with, it feels like you started off as a poet, you weren't going to do short stories, then you started to do short stories, and now you went from this novel kind of based on short stories to a historical novel, which seems like a complete, the Application of Pressure and The Art of Breaking Ice are, I haven't read The Art of Breaking Ice, but what I know about it, like they're very different books. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like a series.
yeah.
Like, how, if you could you kind of have drawn this path that you have taken to where you are now, and now you're back to poetry and selling it. I mean, like, it's very unexpected, I think, is the word.
Yeah, I think you're being very polite calling it a path. I just feel it's more like maybe a ball in a pinball machine that's just sort of shooting around, sort of going any which way. It's I think that when I'm in the just the way my brain works, when I'm in the midst of a major project, my desire to procrastinate kicks in, and generally the form that takes is the idea for the next major project. And so suddenly my attention is diverted, especially and all I want to be doing is doing the next thing, rather than sticking to the work that I'm meant to be doing and finishing that major project. So, and it just so happens that the next big exciting thing is generally something that's quite different. I'm not it's strange. When when the Application of Pressure came out, a lot of people just expected that my second novel would be the continuation, or like the sequel, and that I would just keep writing paramedic stories. And I'm just one of those people that I'm just interested in lots of bizarre and disconnected things. So I've jumped from paramedic stories that are set in contemporary Australia to a historical novel that's set in Antarctica, and the next thing that I'm writing is a mythological retelling from the Bronze Age in Europe. So very different again. And I can't wait to see what my freaking brain cooks up for the thing that's going to come after. Because who knows, it might be science fiction. Maybe I'll write something that's about the colonization of Mars or something. Who knows?
Do you think that eclectic sort of not sticking to one thing has served you, or do you feel like you have to start over every time?
I think I reckon if you asked my publisher, they would probably be happier with me. I don't know that they're not happy with me. I'm just, who knows? Anyway, I probably would be easier to market as a writer if I just stuck to the one pigeonhole. But I just, at the moment, that just doesn't seem to be how it's happening. It's So next time, if I'm only a short step away from discovering that my true home is crime fiction or something, and I'm going to write a series of crime books. Who knows? But so I think that if you wanted to approach a writing life with thinking about a steady career and building up a following of readers, it probably would be the strategic thing to do to keep writing in the same genre, and and sort of, and keep building your skills in that area. But I'm not a strategic person at all. So I think that's sort of why. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend the pinball path. Yeah.
But if somebody enjoyed the application of pressure, um, I feel like having not read The Art of Breaking Ice, but I feel like you're still the same author. So wouldn't they still be like, well, I might enjoy that book too, or would the fact that it's historical fiction and not as violent maybe, or as confronting as
Oh,
the application of pressure was, would would that be a barrier? What do you think? Do you think that
oh,
it's the
yeah.
author that brings
This
the
is a
voice,
really
or do you think it's
interesting question,
the
and I'm
genre
about to
or the
confront this in a couple of days because
especially as a
I'm about
literary
to
writer?
have my official book launch for The Art of Breaking Ice, and I know that a lot of paramedics uh, who read and appreciated the application of pressure are going to be there, and I fear they're going to be sadly disappointed by buying sort of feminist historical fiction. Yeah, I know, because they're probably expecting it to be funny and gory and, sort of, I don't
Oh
know, but
no.
whatever. It is written in a very different style and with a very different voice. Um, and while it would be lovely to say, oh, look, that's just, that there's a commonality in my style as an author. I suspect that if you didn't know, like if you blanked out the name on the cover and gave those two books to a reader, I'm not even sure they would know they're by the same person. Maybe, I don't know. They just feel like very different beasts. Yeah.
So
Oh, yes.
my previous guest has left a question for you, not knowing who you were, and her question was,
No, I've got it. Yeah, okay. So my question is, what do you consider the most important elements of a good novel?
Oh, now, just to let your viewers know, you sent this to me last night, and I'm a shocking insomniac, so I was like lying there at about 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking, "Oh, what is the answer to this question?" And I couldn't. And so, yeah, to begin with, I was thinking, "Oh, it's the beautiful, well composed sentence." But then I was thinking, oh, actually, you can have an entire novel of beautifully composed sentences, and if the story is not there, then it's not. That. And then I was thinking, oh, but even some plot driven novels, if there's not good character, and so I was like tying myself up in knots about this question. And so my answer is that I don't think that there is one particular element that is more important than anything else. I reckon a good novel is like a a beautifully designed machine, in that all of the different components need to be there and functioning together, because you do need, for a good novel, of course, you need a good story, you need beautiful sentences, you need wonderful characters, you need
I love that. I
tension,
love
and the
that.
stakes need to be high. And so I just think that, yeah, so sorry, there's not a, there's
That
not a
is
simple
true. That
it's
is
a good
true.
question, because it made me think about what I like.
No, I think I love that idea of a beautiful machine working together, because that is true. Because there are stories where there's something compelling about it, but you know that it's not a well written novel, but yet it's really popular, and you can see why it's popular, because whatever's working is working, but the parts that aren't working maybe keep it from being a classic or, standing the test of time. It's something for the moment. We can all think of books like that. So no, I think that is, I like that it's all those pieces working together. And there are a lot of books where it gets almost it all right and you really like that book, but then there's books where it gets it all right and and sadly a lot of those books are, well and truly rare, and they're not easily accessible, and like even my favorite books, I can go, oh, really, like, Alice in Wonderland, it was all a dream. Like, it was all a dream. Come on.
Yeah, these days. Oh, poor Lewis Carroll. He'd be there. That would be
it's
that's
an
too cliche.
exceptionally good book, but why was it all a dream?
Yeah.
So do you have a question for our next guest on the podcast?
Okay. Yes, I do. So,